Good evening and welcome to the June 13th regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission at the appropriate time, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission and not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt the meeting, please either switch it to the silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask our Planning Commission recording secretary, Kathy Zarnecki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly? Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Mr. Krent makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Fox seconds it. Any discussion on the agenda? If not, we're ready for the roll call on approving the agenda.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from the May 23rd meeting. As someone wish to make a motion to approve those minutes? I'll let Mr. Buechner have the honors this time. Is there a second? I'll let Mr. Faison have the honors for the second. Any discussion on approving the minutes from the May 23rd meeting? We are ready for the roll call.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next, we have public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission for an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one rushing to the lectern, we will move on then to a couple of preliminary site plan approvals. The first one is the preliminary site plan review SP JPLN 2023-0004, a proposed commercial retail building on the south side of Big Beaver, east of Crooks, the address being 911 West Big Beaver Road, and it's PIN 88-28-28-101-032, Section 28, currently zoned BB Big Beaver District. And Mr. Carlisle, I assume you will be doing the presentation.
Yes, thank you and good evening. First item tonight before you is 911 Big Beaver Road. Planning Commission should be pretty familiar with this project as you've seen elements of this before. This is the 2 of the parcels that kind of make up the Kelly Services site, as we call it. The Planning Commission last reviewed the project with some other elements on it at their meeting in March, and since then the applicant has pulled some of those elements off, but is seeking approval to develop the front end of this site. So they've broken their approvals into 2 different sections. One is 911 Big Beaver, which is that area outlined in red, and the second portion is 999 Big Beaver, which we will talk about after this proposal. So again, 911 Big Beaver is the portion in red with the building in red, and 999 is the portion yellow with the yellow building. So for 911 Big Beaver, the applicant is proposing to construct a 14,000 square foot commercial retail building. They propose to demolish, there's an existing 5-story building on that site that they propose to demolish and convert to parking, as well as provide improved landscaping and lighting to the site. Again, it's 14,000, so 1-story building. It includes a mix of retail, a sit-down restaurant, and a fast casual restaurant. Again, there's no drive-through associated with this particular building, and the building is located adjacent to Big Beaver. It does meet all the Big Beaver form-based requirements. So, however, we do note that the applicant is seeking a waiver to put the building at 11.7 feet rather than the required 10 feet. Again, the Planning Commission can grant a deviation up to 30 feet. So this is well within the Planning Commission's purview for that deviation. With regards to parking, again, the applicant is demolishing the existing 5-story building to create more parking on the site. They are required to provide 137 spaces, and they're providing 144, so they're within the parking guidelines. We do note that they are seeking a waiver from the Planning Commission to waive the loading space requirement, and again, that's in the purview of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission has granted that waiver in the past. With regards to landscaping, they've met all landscaping requirements except for one. They're deficient by one street tree on Big Beaver. As with regards to lighting, they're proposing 6 new parking lot lights and 13 bollard lights around the building. The lighting and photometrics we note do exceed the lighting levels on Big Beaver and along the eastern property line. Again, those are pretty easy and quick fixes. We also do note that the applicant has not shown any building lighting, and that should be included in the photometric plan that does get approved as part of the final site plan. These are the two elevations being proposed. The bottom one is the one that would front on Big Beaver, and the top one would be the one that fronts on the parking lot. Again, it's a tan color with glass, brick, and a limestone veneer. We do ask that the Planning Commission have a discussion with regards to the proposed material in architecture, but also in relation to the existing Kelly Services building on the site that has a significant amount of glass on it. This is an old rendering I pulled. It's important because it does show the 2 buildings that are being proposed here on Big Beaver. Please ignore those buildings that are behind the Kelly Service building, as those are not part of this application. But this does give a sense of the scale of what these new developments would be in relation to the site with the existing Kelly Services building. This is a rendering of the 2 buildings. Again, the one we're talking about now is the one to the left on the screen. And this is just a more close detail of the shared driveway in between the 2 buildings. Planning Commission is well aware that there are 2 sets of standards to review. The first is with regards to the Big Beaver Form District design requirements, and the second is with regards to the site plan review standards. As part of the deliberation, we're asking the Planning Commission to consider the building placement waiver request, the loading space waiver, with regards to the compliance of the Big Beaver standards and the site plan standards, as well as discussion about the architecture and material use. If the Planning Commission does approve the site plan, we do request that the conditions be put on the final site plan. That includes the additional street tree, reducing the lighting levels along the Big Beaver and the eastern property line, and lastly, show the building lights as part of the photometric plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Fox.
I couldn't help but notice on the rendering up on the big screen that I didn't notice when I was reviewing this. Are those panels on the roof of the build there? Are those like a lighting feature, or are those solar panels? What are those?
I'm going to leave it up to the architecture. My understanding is those are screening for mechanical equipment on top of the building.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Seeing none, I guess we're ready for the applicant. So if you want to come forward and sign in and then give us a presentation, I'm sure members of the commission would have questions for you.
I don't know. Should I go to site plan?
Good evening. My name is Arkin Jonah, filling in for my son, my boss, and all that in one. I think Ben covered most everything. I don't have an issue with adding another tree and having the photometrics looked at again. If there are any questions, we've got engineer, architect, and builder here. If there are any questions that you need to ask.
Yes, Mr. Pratt.
Good seeing you again, Arkin.
Pleasure, thank you.
The only issue I have with trees in front of the buildings is covering signage. So is there tree choices that will be not obscuring the signs on the building?
You know, that's a great point, thank you. You can do calmer trees, whatever whatever breed you choose, if you do the columns, and you try to place them where you have demising walls, so it's not in the middle of two spaces that will go.
Okay. I'm just conscious of that because I've been in situations where I've been on Big Beaver and I pass up a store because I was covered by a tree and okay, circle around, it's no big deal, but it'd be nice to have, obviously it's great to have the trees, but finding you're going 45 miles an hour. It's not like you can just slow down and stop on a dime. So that's the only comment I have.
I got myself in trouble one time when I said that a shopping center is only merely a background, how important a sign is for a tenant. It's the best advertising that a tenant can have, that a shopping center is merely a background for a tenant sign. That's how important that sign is for tenants.
Yes, Mr. Faison.
I was curious, is there a reason that your building is set back 11.7 feet and not 10 feet from Big Beaver?
If I tell you I don't know, would you believe me?
No.
Excuse me.
Good evening. Eric Williams with Stonefield Engineering and Design. There is a reason there's an existing consumer's power easement with infrastructure within it, so we're as close as we can comfortably get to it without impacting the existing utilities.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oops,
Ms.
sorry.
Parakis.
Yeah, in one of the renderings that was in our packet, there was a patio. I'm not sure if it was this building or the other one because it wasn't clear from the rendering, but is there going to be a patio associated with the restaurant?
Yep, so we do intend on this particular building, if you look at the site plan on the southeast, southwest corners, similar to what you would see on most retail centers, there'll be patios on each end for the end caps. And I think the rendering that you saw is actually on the other building, so that would be on the northwest corner of the building. It's hard to make out in this particular image, but it would be on this image, we'd have it on the far right side. So that's actually the building in the next application.
Okay.
But there would be 3 patios in total between the two
So when you
buildings.
say the south side, they're really on the parking lot side, not the Big Beaver side?
That's correct. Yep.
I can pull it up. Just give me a second. I'm just going to switch documents.
39.
Page 39 of the...
Page 39. And so would it would go with the sit-down restaurant and then you're assuming there's going to be like fast casual or something and those patios would go with that?
Correct. And I think just to be clear, we would like to have them along Big Beaver as well, but there is a grade change along Big Beaver. While it looks relatively flat, there is some grade change that we're dealing with, so we can't have patio space in that particular area.
Okay, yeah, okay, I see that.
Any other questions from commissioners? Yes.
Do you
Mr.
have
Speaker.
vendors in mind so far, or are you working on that?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Do you have customers in mind for what might go there?
There's quite a bit of interest. We've yet to sign anything simply because we don't have an approval. So there's considerable amount of interest. We're getting a lot of interest from tenants that are not currently in town. The new tenants, new ideas that are coming in.
It's a great location. I go by it every day, several times.
Location, location,
Yep.
location.
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Fox.
I guess I'll ask a question that I throw to a lot of applicants as they come up here. Can you just speak a bit about any green energy, like ways that you're saving energy with the building, the way that they're built, ways that, do you have any renewable energy sources that are going into this building, permeable pavements for the drainage, anything of that sort?
I can't say we do have native plantings, so that's obviously kind of step one.
Okay.
Trying to avoid massive amounts of irrigation, just from a site standpoint. We will be, making improvements to the stormwater management system as well.
Okay.
My turn, I guess. Kevin Biddison Architecture. There's obviously, as you know, there's a lot of glass required in the city, and as in most, and so we are using a very high energy glass that helps both for tenants. Part of the issue with retail is you want it to be transparent. Transparent is not your friend when it comes to that, but there are a lot of good products out there today that we at least have been able to, turn down that sun a little bit without losing, the transparency for retail users. So that's probably the biggest area. The roof area, is insulated more than would be required because of the slope. So we're sloping it with insulation, so that gives us a little bit more of that insulation. The shade that's on top of the roof that we're screening from view for the office building. So we're also screening from the top of that. And the products, we're looking at some shading products that have a green visual and that will give more shade to the roof. So that'll help a little bit in terms of heat on the roof, and then light roofing color as well to help the sun, the dark, the black roof surface is a much worse condition in terms of that. So with the additional screen and the lighter roof membrane, that'll also help. I mean, it's a shell building, so those are the kinds of things that we can do with this kind of a product. So, but we think that's we've done a pretty good job, at least, of making these as tight as we can from an energy standpoint.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Parakis.
It looks like you're seeking a loading space waiver. I don't know who would answer this question, but can you talk to us a little bit about the loading needs and why you would feel that you don't need it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on these retail style buildings, there's really, quite honestly, not a great spot for a dedicated loading zone, right? You're usually going to want those to be close to the front door, easily accessible. When these are set back from the road, that's easy, right? We've got 40 feet behind the building, we can get a loading zone in there comfortably. On a building like this, based on the mixture of uses, we would typically see, depending on who the user is, there's certain off hours where there would be minimal vehicle traffic. They'd be able to pull up into the areas south of the building, unload, for 10 to 15 minutes and be on their way. I think on this, again, trying to keep the two applications separate. If you look in front of the trash enclosure, there's actually an area that's about 14 by 60 feet long. So if for some reason there was not room in front of the building to park, or they felt that they needed to stop for a longer period of time, there is room for a vehicle to stop there. They would just have to wheel, whatever they're delivering just across a single drive aisle to then be in front of the building. So I don't know that it was explicitly called out in the site plan, but if you look at it, there is an area that kind of serves for access from the truck, but then also can be doubled as loading zone.
Okay, thank you.
Also, we've been building shopping centers for almost 40 years. I don't think I've ever had one where a truck parks where they're supposed to deliver. They always just park anywhere, block the drive, do anything. I don't know if you can actually put in a loading, unloading, and a truck. And if you get a second one, it's even worse.
Any other questions from the commission? I have two brief questions. One is, I guess, bring your architect back up and kind of talk a little bit about how the architecture will reflect the existing Kelly Services building. Are you intending on trying to duplicate it or fit in with it?
The materials on the exterior, the brick and the glass. So the brick that we're using is, similar in color to the to Kelly building, so that it blends in. We are not using a green glass for the reasons we just talked about relative to first floor. The reflectivity is not something you want on retail, but the limestone is not on the Kelly building, but we feel that that's a good accent to the brick. And again, that's really the materials are very simple on the building, but we do want, it sits right in front of the Kelly building, so we didn't want to do something that was totally foreign to that.
Okay. And I guess the next question might be for your civil engineer, if they've had a chance to look at their report from OHM and whether or not you're able to comply with the recommendations from OHM.
We did have a chance to review from what we could tell, we don't have any objections. It looks like a lot of signage, just a little bit of clarification on the ADA pathway, things like that. So we do not have any objections to the request. The only thing I would note is that we do have to work in conjunction with Oakland County Road Commission at the end of the day. So I think some of those changes within the right-of-way, we can't necessarily commit to them yet, but we'll work with both groups to come to some sort of agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up
Yes,
with that
Mr.
one?
Krantz.
Still working with the report from OHM. A couple things I noticed on, this would be item number 5. It says the exiting driveway to Crooks to be modified. One thing I really liked about that was they increased the radius from a tighter radius to a
Larger radius. Yep.
radius. The point is, I've seen so many times, not necessarily in Troy, but yes, sometimes in Troy, where trucks don't have the maneuverability to make these tight right turns, and they end up going over the sidewalk or cracking it or going into some of the the grass and smushing it out. And so I like that idea that they suggested of increasing the diameter of that radius, or increasing the radius size. Would that be something that would be on your mind when you meet with the road?
Yeah, and so I know Brent can speak to this. There was a lot of time spent between us, OHM, the Road Commission, leading up to the March meeting. And so I think we were all able to sit down and come to agreement. I think this particular comment's new, so we will go back to the Road Commission and just verify that they don't have any objections, and just work through the exact details of it.
Good. And then on number 6, that's really for 999, so I guess we'll get to that next time. Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Jonah or his experts here? Oh, yes, Ms. Paracas.
Yeah, one more thing. Can you just tell me a little bit about, you're overparked, so that's kind of unusual to be overparked.
I think it's 7 spaces, I believe. Based on the mixture of uses that Arkin and his team think they'll have, that's how we broke it out. Obviously, with a spec building like this, there has to be some flexibility at the end of the day. I don't remember the exact numbers of the breakdown of fast casual restaurants, et cetera, but we want to make sure there is some flexibility.
Okay.
Long-term, obviously, as much as they want to keep tenants forever, they don't. So they do need some flexibility if they want to bring in larger restaurant space or anything like that.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, we'll have you take a seat, and we don't have a public hearing, but we do give opportunity for anyone from the public that would like to ask questions or pose any opinions. Anyone from the public that would like to address the commission on this issue? Seeing no one coming to the lectern, I'll bring it back to the commission for either further questions or maybe a resolution. Anyone want to float a resolution or further questions for Mr. Carlisle or Mr. Savinant or even Ms. Dufresne? Anyone wish to, Mr. Faison, you have a question? Or you want to float a resolution?
I do have a question. So Tom referenced some specific points in the OHM report, and they're not in the resolution that we have in the package. I was under the impression that they would comply with the OHM recommendations. That would be a requirement. Does that need to be read into the resolution, or is that going to be handled by staff?
It can be, but those comments are also forwarded to the city engineer, and they're aware of those same recommendations. So if you have a comfort level, you want to put that in the resolution, you certainly could, but the engineering department has them and will incorporate those comments in the review during final if this is approved.
Okay, thanks. I'm prepared to make a
Go ahead.
resolution if there's no other.
Yeah, well,
I was going to second it, so
go ahead, Mr. Faison.
Resolved that preliminary site plan approval for the proposed commercial retail building south side of Big Beaver, east of Crooks, 911 West Big Beaver, Section 28, currently zoned BB Big Beaver District, be granted, subject to the following conditions. Add 1 additional street tree along Big Beaver, reduce lighting levels along Big Beaver and the eastern property line, provide details for building lights prior to final approval.
second.
Before I get the second, is there anything we need to add to that resolution, or does that cover our needs?
I think we're in good shape.
Then Mr. Fox seconds it. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations. Now we're on to the second one, which is a preliminary site plan review, SPJPLN 2023-0005, proposed commercial retail building, south side of Big Beaver, east of Crooks, the address being 999 West Big Beaver Road, PIN 88-20-28-101-034, Section 28, currently zoned BB Big Beaver District. Back to Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you. This will sound like and seem like the same presentation. I guarantee there is slight differences. Again, Planning Commission reviewed the site back in March. Since that time, the applicant's broken it into two different applications. You just reviewed the project in red, and now we're going to review the project in yellow. Again, the project in yellow is 999 Big Beaver. So 999 Big Beaver includes the improvement of an 8,000 square foot commercial retail building with improved landscaping and lighting. It's worth noting and important to note that the Kelly Services building that's there will remain in its current function and use as an office building. The 8,000 square feet includes a sit-down restaurant and retail, and that patio that we noted and talked about earlier is located adjacent to the building to be served by that restaurant. Again, the building is also adjacent to Big Beaver. It meets all the Big Beaver form-based requirements. Again, similar to the last request, they're asking for relief to go to 10 feet, 10.9 feet rather than the required 10. I assume it's for the same reason as the other building, that there is an easement in between Big Beaver and the building itself. They are required to provide 545 spaces. They're providing 344 spaces on this site. However, they are seeking some shared parking, which I'll talk about in a second. And again, they are seeking a similar waiver for the loading spaces. With regards to shared parking, the area in red is the area where they're proposing shared parking. If the Planning Commission remembers, there's approved development to the south on the Lindsay Center site. And the site in question that we're talking about is to the north, adjacent to Big Beaver. And so the area in red is an excess parking area that they are seeking the shared parking approval for. OHM has reviewed the shared parking and does support it. However, they do note that it will require some coordination based on the timing of when the two developments occur. If they both occur concurrently, there should be no issue. If one occurs before the other, there should be some pedestrian improvements that will be required to occur. We do note that in that shared parking area is the area that we had discussed some additional development going in the future, and included was in the previous application. If future development does come in, the shared parking would be reviewed in its entirety as well moving forward to ensure there's enough parking on the site as a whole. The landscape plan complies with all the requirements. The applicant, similar to the last application, is adding both parking lots and bollard lights. Again, the only deficiency we note for this application is that they're not showing the building lights that need to be shown on the site on the photometric plan. Similar elevations, it's just a smaller building, but same material, same kind of design, same material use, architectural style. Again, this is a rendering, we saw it earlier, of the site in its entirety. The building in discussion is the one on the right. You can see the existing Kelly Services building kind of behind it. Again, the shared drive view. Same standards as the last review, Big Beaver standards, as well as the site plan review design standards. And again, similar to the last application, there should be discussion on the building placement waiver request, loading space waiver, the Big Beaver design standards, the site plan design standards, the architecture material use, as well as the shared parking reduction. If the Planning Commission approves the preliminary site plan with the conditions, if they approve the preliminary site plan, we request the following conditions: provide bicycle parking on site, as well as show the building lights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Carlisle indicated that if there's not a simultaneous construction of both parcels with a shared parking, that in that event, there would be some temporary walks or pedestrian features on there. My question is that something we've done administratively within the planning department, or should that eventuality be put in the resolution of approval?
I can't think of a similar type situation that we've had to deal with like this before, so it seems appropriate that this is something that could be in the resolution of Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Buechner.
The shared parking, how many parking spaces in that shared spot?
So Mr. Buechner, there's 211 spaces of shared parking in the shared parking spots. It's more than 211, so it's well above what's required. So there's a lot more excess parking on this site than what's required. But they're trying to gain 211 additional spaces.
And the distance from the shared space to where we're talking about is fairly far?
It's a couple hundred feet.
Is that within standards or
Yeah, because
other
what
standards?
they would do then is the Kelly Service Building, the people that work the Kelly Services would go in the shared parking area, which is much closer to their building, and then where they normally park, the front side, that would be used for the parking for the commercial buildings.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
I can't help but notice that bicycle parking wasn't referenced with the previous build. Is there some condition that changes between the two builds that requires?
No, I think they probably put it on one site and didn't put it on the other.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're required to provide one bicycle rack, so it's not a very big condition to meet.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I guess we'll bring back Mr. Jonah and his consulting staff.
I'm sorry?
And your consulting staff.
Thank you. Again, my name's Arkin Jonah. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to bring someone that can answer them for us.
Any questions? Maybe have a little bit of discussion about the shared parking from your perspective and give us some rationale about how it would work.
If I could maybe just clarify
Sure.
Mr. Fox's question first. So if you look at the southwest corner of the retail building, there's a crosswalk to another area of concrete sidewalk. They're kind of hard to see, but there are two bike racks that we did propose there. So just they were thought about. I just don't think it was very clear. So just want to clarify that.
Okay. Can you address the shared parking?
Can I?
Oh, go ahead.
Can I
Yeah.
ask one question
Go ahead, yeah.
that'll lead into that?
Yeah.
I was curious of the current occupancy of the Kelly Services building.
We get approximately 60 to 80 employees a day in that whole building.
Okay, that's helpful.
So
Thank you.
there's plenty of parking.
Okay,
What
thanks.
percent is that of occupancy? Approximately.
There used to be close to 800 people that worked in that building.
So parking's not going to be an issue, is what you're saying?
We have plenty of parking.
Yep.
So can you address the shared parking and how you envision it working?
Yeah, and I think Ben honestly did a good job of kind of describing how that would look. So majority of the parking field in front would be utilized by both retail buildings, obviously on each parcel respectively. And then from there, there is pedestrian walkways. You can kind of see on this image, there's the wider area, kind of the center of the Kelly Services building that leads to a sidewalk that you can then walk south. And similarly, I believe the number was right around 40 or 45 spaces that were shared from the Lindsay Center building. So again, there's far more parking than we need out there while we work through just revisions on the additional phases.
Great. Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah.
Yes,
Just
Mr.
one,
Grant.
regarding from OHM report, item number 6, about, they say the The office building at 999 Big Beaver has 2 access drives along the south side for loading zones. They should be configured such that the sidewalk paralleling the south side of the building is continuous through the loading zone drives. Now, can you amplify on that? Can you give us a picture of what that's about?
Yeah, so the way it's constructed today is both of the loading zones are asphalt, and what it looks like is the sidewalks at either end just terminate. I don't know, it didn't appear that they're ADA compliant at this point. I think it's one of those things that we need to talk to OHM a little bit more about. Obviously, if it is an ADA walkway, then we'll have to address it. I think one of the things that we would want to avoid is, if those future phases of construction happen, and when they happen, there will be some utility rework there. So I'd hate to tear it up today just to add some sort of walkway and then have to rip it out in the future to rework some of the utilities. So I think that's one of the items we'll talk about with them. Unfortunately, we just saw the report on Monday or Friday night, so we just haven't had a chance to really go through the whole details, but we'll obviously work with them on correct fix there.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions from the commission? Yes?
Mr. Chair, would
Yeah.
you please ask the civil engineer to sign in?
Yes,
if he
please
hasn't
sign
already?
in too, yes.
Eric Williams with Stonefield. Oh, sign in.
Thank
There
you.
go.
Thank you for the request, Ms. Zarnicki.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, as soon as you're done signing in, I'll have you sit down and see if anyone from the public is here. Anyone from the public that would like to address the commission on this issue? Seeing no one coming forward, we'll bring it back to the commission for either questions or resolution. Yes, Mr. Beekner.
I just have a question. I'm newer, he's newer, but I'm still newer. So we've approved one, I think we approved another before. This is a third portion. I think there's at least a fourth. So we're doing it one piece at a time, based on what we think, knowing that the fourth piece might be a tricky piece. I don't know if any of my colleagues would help me understand that better.
You're probably correct, and if that might be a question to ask the petitioner, to get some more information from them as far as what they envision for that fourth piece.
I think we're all smart to be looking out in the future.
Yes.
Am I allowed to, I'm sorry, I might have been a few minutes late, but.
Did you want to ask Mr. Jonah
Can I,
a little bit about that?
please?
Sure. Mr. Jonah will have you, if you don't mind coming back up.
Not at all.
It's a long walk.
From what I understand, we're working to better the plan. There were issues that, at the last meeting that needed to be addressed. He needed to start moving on this and start to demo and get everything on the retail going. I believe next meeting we'd be in, next meeting we'd come back in? Soon. I'm hoping as soon as possible, because the construction has to happen all at one time.
That was my next question, is how would you do parcel one? This is parcel two, and
We
there's one
want to
three.
hit, we'd love to be able to hit it all at the same time. Get started with demo and. Do you have a phasing plan? No. But it's something that it has to work all in one. You have to be conscientious of the parking when you're demoing. There's an ongoing business that's there.
Sure.
That we have to deal with, but this is all going to happen simultaneously and basically at the same time.
You answered my next question already, thank you. Yeah. Did he have more to add, or are we good?
No.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Jonah, now that he's getting ready to sit down again? All right. Yes. We'll bring it back to the commission for resolution. Mr. Fox.
I'm going to make a resolution, if that's all right. Resolved that preliminary site plan approval for the proposed commercial retail building south side of Big Beaver, east of Crooks, 999 West Big Beaver, Section 28, currently zoned Big Beaver District, be granted, subject to the following conditions. The applicants provide a bicycle rack and provide building light details prior to final approval, both of which to the satisfaction of city staff.
Anything that needs to be added to that resolution?
Yeah.
Yes,
if
Mr.
I may,
Hudson.
With Mr. Sabadan's suggestion, in the event doesn't look like it's going to happen, but in the event there is not a simultaneously development of the shared parking on these parcels, in the event that occurs, there be some temporary accoutrements put on that shared parking to ensure the safety of pedestrians.
Okay, is that okay to add to your resolution, Mr. Fox?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Would you like the honor of seconding the resolution?
I would like to second that
Okay,
resolution.
Since you added on the important part there. Any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, I guess we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Chagel?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations. You have for your approval.
Does this mean I can ask my boss for a raise?
Yeah, you did a very efficient job. I would ask.
We didn't go over
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are on to public comment for items on the agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to address the commission for an item on the agenda? Seeing no one coming forth, then move on to planning commission comment. And we'll start with Mr. Carlisle tonight. Any planning commission comments from you?
No comment, thank you.
Mr. Sabato?
I guess I got two quick ones. I attended a Michigan Association of Planning MAP meetup last month. And Mr. Krant and Mr. Fox attended. They're really good. They're enjoyable. We met at Woodbridge Tavern, a Woodbridge pub, and we walked the Woodbridge neighborhood and talked to some residents of the neighborhood and heard a little bit about the history, and it was great. Number two is the bike rack reminded me of something that happened a couple weeks ago. Really strange. We got a complaint from a resident who was at one of our local restaurants, doesn't matter which one, but there was a piece of pipe sticking out of the ground about this high. It was a trip hazard, and they called to complain about the trip hazard. So we contacted the owner and like, what's going on with this? It turns out it was a stainless steel bike rack that someone, we think, took a Sawzall, cut it off, and recycled. So the owner had to replace the bike rack. So anyways, that's all I got.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Sabato. Ms. Dufresne? anything?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, Mr.
Nothing,
Fagel?
thank you.
Mr. Krant?
Just to piggyback on what Brent was saying about that walk-through bridge, what was it?
Woodbridge?
Woodbridge, thank you. Some of those homes architecturally are just gorgeous, just simply gorgeous. And I'm wondering why, and matter of fact, in one of those vacant lots, Robinson and Sons or Brothers added 4 condominiums on that same street. I'm wondering why developers can't get that kind of quality housing as far as architectural features into their plans. We seem to have a style in Troy that seems to be duplicated all over the place, but it was so refreshing to see what was done in the 1920s, 1930s, and it didn't seem that difficult to do, and I would hope maybe there's some way that we can document that stuff and then send it out to our local developers to inspire them to do something a little more creative like it was done back in the 1920s.
Ms. Parakis?
Nothing, thank you.
Faison?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Hudson?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Biegner? Mr. Fox?
So I had one question. So we've had a number of public meetings where various drafts of the master plan have been out there, and there's a couple of residents that I've been in contact with that have just been reviewing, and they've hit me with questions, so I'm kind of passing those questions along. Would it be possible for city staff to put together some kind of like a report or summary, something that we can say like, because I know when we've talked about different incentives for green building in the past, city staff has kind of said there's a lot of stuff that the city does that people are not aware of, that we already do. So I was wondering if there's any type of like handout or like portion of the website that I could be directing people to that kind of summarizes the different incentives that the city's already offering in regards to efficient energy buildings, green buildings, et cetera. Or if something does not exist, if something could be created.
So sustainability is something that's been discussed at various boards and committees, both appointed and elected. And there's a lot that goes on, and I don't know what efforts are being undertaken right now to compile that list. It's been discussed internally. There's a number of things that our zoning ordinance requires or allows for. I could work on a list, but in terms of a comprehensive list of all departments of the city, that's going to be a bigger ask.
Okay.
I guess, I think I've said this before, stay tuned, because again, it's on the burner right now, and I just don't know when it's going to bubble to the surface and when, when there's going to be any action taken or what have you. So, I mean, I can put together a list of things that we do at the planning department level that I think maybe
Sure.
informative.
I think even that would be really helpful, just because, again, it's, I'm not even fully I've only been here 6 months. I'm not even fully knowledgeable on everything yet. So being able to just have something that I can kind of pass along and be like, here you go, take a look at this, ask questions, et cetera, give interested people something to build off of. So
I thought the answer that was provided by the architect, Kevin Biddison, this evening on your question regarding sustainability, there was building elements that I thought it was a great answer. And a lot of different things, a lot of different elements in that building, reduce the heat island effect. I thought he did a fantastic job of answering that. Just little nuances that I wouldn't have thought of when I looked at that building.
yeah, oh, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, no.
Ms. Zarnicki, anything for
I
you?
have none. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to comment that I watched the last meeting on YouTube, and I had 3 comments. First, thank Ms. Parakis for doing a great job chairing the meeting, her trial by fire based upon the issue you were dealing with, so thank you. Secondly, thank Ms. Dufresne for postponing the action on the bylaws until I could be here. I appreciate that. And then third was a question. I see Mr. Savadan explained why City Council wasn't ready to move forward with the master plan revisions we've suggested. Is that meeting going to be June 26th then, where they're going to talk about it? Have you decided whether you want any of us at that meeting, or is that something you want to handle without having one of us looking over your shoulder?
Well, it's a meeting that's open to the public, so the Planning Commission is certainly welcome to attend as residents. I don't believe there's a need for any Planning Commission member or any member of the Neighborhood Node Subcommittee to attend, but we can talk about that.
Okay, great.
At this point, there's no need.
All right, thank you. And with that, then we are adjourned.
Very good.